Left of the box. Do you know what would really help with, the cost of living and all that sort of stuff? Universal basic income. If there was a universal basic income in Canada, there'd be more babies because more people could then afford the time off of work. More people could afford the groceries. It is a universal basic income would help societies in ways that it's hard to even imagine at this point. How much more freedom people would have to do the jobs that they want, to start new businesses, to explore art and other things that, are valuable to cultures, but we're not seeing as much anymore because unless you can make money off of it, people tend to avoid doing them or neglect their talents and stuff because like when I look at my art and stuff of that sort, I'm not making money from my art, as Looney Tunes 9000 is plugging my art website in the sandbox. And yeah, so far my only customer has been my mom. If I had to rely on that as an income, then, I wouldn't be able to. And I'd be forced into a job that is actually toxic for my health. Like, fortunately, I'm on ODSP, which is nowhere near enough to get by on. But you know, I scratch by on it. You find ways of just kind of scratching by on it. But without that, I'd be forced into work that is toxic for me, unhealthy for me. And then it's not just me. It's not like I would improve the work environment for the people around me. But if we had a universal basic income, it would mean that employers have to increase their standards, treat their employees better, because they have options now. Employers wouldn't be able to abuse their employees so much because there'd be options, which is part of the reason why corporations definitely don't want a universal basic income to go through, even though it actually helps with people's employment because it allows them to afford childcare, to get transportation, to get certification and training. A universal basic income would improve the lives of everyone. Everyone. Like, that one simple thing would improve the lives of everyone. And Leah Gazan has been a staunch advocate for it, and she's been promoting it, and she was able to get a bill to be voted on about universal basic income, and she has just been championing this for years. Amazing MP, NDP MP. So here she is. They got it to vote. They finally got a bill for livable basic income to vote.
Center.
Mr. Speaker, today members of Parliament will vote on Bill C-223 for a guaranteed livable basic income in Canada. While the affordability crisis is hurting all people, those who depend on a deteriorating social safety net are hit the hardest. That includes women and gender diverse people fleeing violence, stuck in abuse because they lack the financial resources to leave.
And that is also another very good point about universal basic income. I was so caught up with some features, but again, that also allows people to get out of abusive situations. If you have, money that's yours, the ability to, not have to rely on your partner for all your finances, because then they can manipulate you, they can control you, they can hold it above your head. Like, the financial abuse, it's a real thing. And so some people may feel stuck in relationships too. Like, you may have a couple that have just want to go their own way, but they can't afford to move into separate places. So they're stuck living with each other when they don't want to. So again, a universal basic income would solve so many problems in society.
For Call to Justice 4.5 of the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls to put in place a guaranteed livable basic income, something that every single member of Parliament in this House admitted to or committed to implement. Also, many senior women who do not have pensions because they spent their lives caring for families who live in poverty, while the many people in the disability community are subjected to legislative poverty due to insufficient programs like the Canada Disability Benefit.
One of my concerns, if they get a universal basic income through, is that they would somehow find a way to not include people with disabilities. And I say that because she's mentioning the Canada Disability Benefit. That was supposed to solve all the problems for people living with disability. And I was skeptical from the get-go, and I was right to be skeptical. And I have a video with MP from Kitchener Centre here, and he's also a staunch advocate for a universal basic income and just the Canada Disability Benefit. And when the government finally pushed it through, suddenly it's only people who qualify for the disability tax credit can get it. And then of the people who qualify for the disability tax credit, only a few of those people could get it. Far more than half of people who have to rely on disability were instantly excluded from it. And so it wouldn't surprise me if they were to give like a universal basic income to able-bodied minded people while still demanding that people with disabilities receive less. And some people might say, nah, that would never happen. But look at CERB. It's already happened. You know, when CERB came out, that was $2,000 a month to people to help with their income during that time. That is roughly twice the amount people with disabilities get, depending on where you live in the country. And people with disabilities couldn't apply for it. Now, technically speaking, yes, you could apply for it. They wouldn't benefit from it because when it comes to government programs like that, they will deduct dollar for dollar. So if somebody were to claim a CERB payment, they would lose out on their disability payments. And this hit people especially hard if they were on disability and have part-time jobs, because many people who are on disability are forced to have part-time jobs. So even though the work that they did would technically meet the requirements for CERB, when they took CERB, it deducted from their disability dollar for dollar and left them in a worse position than they would have been had they not taken CERB. People living with disabilities didn't get to benefit from CERB. And we saw, as the government handed out twice as much money to people than they do to people who are living with disabilities. So if a universal livable income comes through, I'd be skeptical until I see it in play as to find out if they find a way to exclude people with disabilities.
MPs need to ensure our constituents are provided with a level of financial support to uphold their charter rights. I urge all my colleagues to do so by voting in favor of the bill and stop punching down on people living in poverty.
Center.
So at different times, yes, like the Liberal government has pledged to do this, all that sort of stuff. So they had the vote. And Leah tweets out, I'm very disappointed that despite overwhelming evidence in support of a guaranteed livable basic income and its inclusion in the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, calls for justice, Conservatives and Liberals together voted down my Bill C-223 today. This is a gut punch from the Liberal government and the Conservative Party to all those living in legislated poverty. This contradicts the promise that every party made to implement all calls for justice, but we will not stop our fight for economic justice. I'd like to thank those who helped support my bill, including women's organizations, researchers, students, unions, and fellow parliamentarians from across the country. Together, we will continue pushing until everyone in Canada is free from poverty. You see, the Conservatives are making a big deal about the NDP propping up the Liberal government through their arrangement because the Liberal government has a minority position. But when you go back and look at voting histories, the amount of times that the Liberals and Conservatives have voted together against motions that the NDP wanted to put through. I'm sorry, who's propping up who? I remember when COVID first started and the NDP tried to push through a bill for pharmacare, universal pharmacare. The Liberals and Conservatives voted together to vote it down. So often you hear these promises from the Liberals about things that they want to do. But when it comes time to vote, they vote with the Conservatives. And it is actually quite shocking when you see how much they vote with Conservatives against programs that would benefit Canadians. There is far more crossover between Liberals and Conservatives than there are with Liberals and the NDP, although that gap is narrowing as well. We talk about we have like a parliamentary system with all these different parties and how beneficial that is, but really, a lot of them just get merged into the same talking points. They're owned by the same donors. They all end up being part of the establishment. So the NDP, there are members within that I support, but I do not support the NDP as a whole. I don't know if there's Liberals I support. Some of them might say good things from time to time, but they're too establishment. And the fact that they aren't calling out Justin Trudeau for supporting a genocide in Gaza, and now it's being moved into Lebanon, because none of them have the integrity to say that what Justin Trudeau's Liberals is doing is wrong. I can't say I support any Liberal at this point, because how much death and destruction do you have to see before you call out your leader? Whereas in the NDP, there have been people to call out the genocide that's happening. It took a long time for Jagmeet Singh to finally do it, but he did. But you do see that from the NDP. You don't see that from anyone in the Liberal government.